The silver chains bit into Amelia's wrists as the guards dragged her across the obsidian floor of the High Council chamber, her knees scraping against the polished stone with each stumbling step. Blood dripped from her mouth where Alpha Brennan's ring had split her lip, and the taste of copper mingled with the metallic tang of the silver that burned against her skin like acid. "This Omega dared to lay hands on my son." Brennan's voice boomed through the vaulted chamber, reverberating off walls carved with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with malevolent light. "She attacked him without provocation, without reason, like the feral creature she is." Amelia lifted her head, forcing herself to meet the eyes of the 12 high alphas seated in their throne-like chairs, arranged in a semicircle around her. Her vision blurred from the silver poisoning already spreading through her bloodstream, but she could make out their expressions: disgust, contempt, boredom. To them, she was nothing, less than nothing. "That's a lie," she gasped, her voice barely audible over the jeering of the pack members who'd crowded into the chamber's gallery to witness her humiliation. "He tried to force himself on me in the supply room. I was defending myself." Brennan's son, Corbin, stood beside his father with a smirk twisting his handsome features and not a mark on him. Of course there wasn't. He was an Alpha's heir, protected by his father's position and the pack's blind loyalty. She was an Omega servant, with no family, no rank, no voice that mattered. "Defending herself," Brennan laughed, the sound cruel and mocking. "An Omega, attacking an Alpha? That alone is grounds for execution, regardless of her filthy lies." The chains tightened as the guards yanked her upright, forcing her to her knees. Silver hooks embedded in the links caught the torchlight, gleaming with promise of deeper pain. Her wolf whimpered inside her, retreating from the poison that made every nerve-ending scream, but Amelia locked the sound away. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of hearing her beg. "The law is clear," said Alpha Rendell from his seat, his weathered face impassive. "An Omega who raises her hand against any ranked wolf forfeits her life. The method of execution, however, is the injured party's choice." Amelia's heart stuttered. She'd known this might be the outcome the moment Corbin had started screaming that she'd attacked him, but hearing the words spoken with such finality made her wolf howl in despair inside her chest. "I choose the silver whipping," Brennan announced, his smile widening as gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. 50 lashes with the chain of binding. Let her die slowly, so all Omegas learn what happens when they forget their place." The chamber erupted in shouts, some approving, others protesting. The chain of binding wasn't meant for execution. It was an ancient punishment reserved for wolves who'd committed treason, a torture device forged from pure silver, infused with wolfsbane, and spelled to burn away a wolf's connection to their animal spirit. 50 lashes would leave her a broken husk, trapped between human and wolf, neither dead nor truly alive. "This is excessive," a voice cut through the chaos, and Amelia's gaze snapped to the speaker. Alpha King Elijah had been silent until now, his massive frame relaxed in the largest throne, his expression unreadable. He was younger than the other High Alphas, crowned only 2 years ago after his father's death, and rumored to be as ruthless as he was powerful. "The Omega's crime, if committed, warrants death, not torture." "With respect, Your Majesty," Brennan said, though his tone held no respect at all. "The decision is mine to make. She harmed my bloodline." Elijah's dark eyes, almost black in the torchlight, fixed on Amelia for a long moment. She felt the weight of his stare like a physical touch, probing, assessing. Then his gaze moved to Corbin, and something flickered across his face too quickly to identify. "Very well," Elijah said softly. "Proceed." The guards dragged her to the iron post in the center of the chamber, chaining her facing it so her back was exposed. Someone tore her servant's tunic from shoulder to waist, leaving her skin bare to the frigid air and the eyes of hundreds of onlookers. Shame burned hotter than the silver, as laughter and crude remarks echoed through the space. "This is what happens to Omegas who don't know their place," Brennan announced, taking the silver chain from an assistant. It was as thick as a man's thumb, each link inscribed with runes that glowed a sickly green. "Count them out." The first strike came without warning, and Amelia's scream tore from her throat before she could stop it. It felt like lightning and fire combined, like her spine was being ripped from her body. The silver didn't just burn, it burrowed, seeking her wolf, trying to sever the connection between human and animal. "One!" the crowd chanted. The second lash crossed the first, forming an X of pure agony. Amelia's vision went white, her fingers clawing at the post until her nails split and bled. "Two!" By the 10th lash, Amelia couldn't breathe. Each impact drove the air from her lungs and left her gasping against the post, her back a canvas of torn flesh and silver burns. She could feel her wolf dying inside her, the bond between them fracturing with each strike. The chain wasn't just punishing her, it was destroying everything that made her wolf. 20! The crowd roared. Amelia's consciousness began to slip. The pain was too much, too consuming. She drifted, her mind retreating to the only safe memory she had. Her mother, singing softly while they worked in the Pack Gardens before the sickness took her. Before Amelia became truly alone. "Stop!" The command cut through her delirium like a blade. The chanting ceased abruptly. Amelia tried to turn her head, but her muscles wouldn't obey. "I said stop!" Elijah's voice was closer now, and tinged with something Amelia couldn't name. "Release her from the post." "Your Majesty, the sentence hasn't been carried out," Brennan protested. "Only 20 lashes have been administered." "I'm aware. Remove the chains. Now." Footsteps approached, and then hands, surprisingly gentle, were unfastening the iron shackles. Amelia's legs gave out the moment she was freed, but before she could hit the ground, arms caught her. Strong arms that held her carefully, mindful of her shredded back. "Look at me," Elijah commanded softly. Amelia forced her eyes open. The Alpha King's face was inches from hers, his expression intense in a way that made her wolf stir, despite the silver poisoning flooding her veins. His eyes had shifted to full alpha black, the sign of a wolf barely restrained, and his jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Tell me the truth," he said, his voice pitched for her ears alone, despite the silent chamber. "Did you attack Corbin without provocation?" She should lie. She should say whatever would end this nightmare. But something about the way he held her, like she was precious instead of worthless, like her answer actually mattered, made her whisper the truth. "No. He cornered me in the supply room after I brought clean linens to his quarters. He said Omegas were made to service Alphas, and I was lucky he'd chosen me. When I tried to leave, he grabbed me. I pushed him away and ran. I didn't even hurt him. He's not wounded." Elijah's growl was subsonic, felt more than heard, and his arms tightened fractionally around her. Then he stood, still holding her against his chest, and turned to face the High Council. "Corbin," he said, his tone flat and cold. "Come here." The younger Alpha approached with swagger that faltered when he met Elijah's gaze. "Your Majesty?" "Strip your shirt." Silence fell like a thunderclap. Corbin's face went pale. "I don't understand." "Your father claims this Omega attacked you viciously enough to warrant execution. Show us your wounds." When Corbin didn't move, Elijah's voice dropped to a lethal purr. "Strip your shirt." With shaking hands, Corbin pulled his tunic over his head. His chest and torso were unmarked, his skin unblemished and whole. Not a scratch, not a bruise, nothing to indicate he'd been in any kind of altercation. "Interesting," Elijah mused. "She attacked you, but left no mark. Yet the silver chains have nearly killed her, and her scent." He paused, inhaling deeply near Amelia's hair, and his growl returned, darker and more dangerous. "Her scent tells the truth. Fear. Fresh fear. Not from this chamber, but older, from hours ago. And beneath it, your scent, Corbin. All over her, where no ranked Alpha's scent should be, unless given permission." Brennan stepped forward. "Your Majesty, my son wouldn't—" "Your son," Elijah interrupted, his voice cutting like glass, "attempted to rape an Omega under your pack's protection, then lied about it to have her executed when she refused him. That's not just a crime against her. It's a crime against pack law, against me, and against every Omega in this kingdom who should be able to work without fearing for their safety." He shifted Amelia in his arms, cradling her so carefully despite his obvious rage. She could feel his heartbeat against her shoulder, racing fast and strong, and his warmth was seeping into her frozen limbs. "The sentence is void," Elijah declared, "and I'm invoking sovereign claim." The chamber exploded in shocked voices. Sovereign claim was an ancient right, rarely used, that allowed the Alpha King to take any unmated wolf under his direct protection. It superseded pack bonds, blood ties, everything. Once claimed, that wolf answered only to the king. "You can't," Brennan sputtered. "She's part of my pack." "She was part of your pack. Now she's mine." Elijah's eyes swept the assembly, daring anyone to challenge him. "As for your son, Corbin will face trial for attempted rape and false accusation. If found guilty, and he will be, the punishment is exile or death. I'll let the High Council decide which." Corbin's face went from pale to gray. "Father." "Take him to the holding cells," Elijah ordered 2 of his personal guards. "And Brennan, if you or anyone from your pack attempts to interfere with my investigation or seeks vengeance against this Omega for your son's crimes, I will consider it an act of war against the crown." As Corbin was dragged away, screaming protests and curses, Elijah looked down at Amelia again. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I'm taking you to the palace healers. The silver needs to be drawn out before it causes permanent damage." "Why?" The words scraped out of her raw throat. "Why are you helping me?" His thumb traced a gentle path along her jaw, and the intimacy of the gesture made her breath catch. "Because you told the truth when a lie would have been easier. Because you defended yourself when you had every right to. And because—" He hesitated, something almost vulnerable flashing across his hard features. "Because my wolf won't let me leave you here." Then he was striding from the chamber, his pack members parting before him like water, and Amelia felt consciousness beginning to slip away again. But this time, instead of fear, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. She woke to softness and warmth, so foreign to her usual rough palate in the servants' quarters that for a moment she thought she was dreaming. But then the pain registered, a deep, throbbing ache across her entire back that made her gasp, and she knew this was real. "Don't move," a woman's voice, kind but firm. "The silver's been mostly drawn out, but your wounds are still healing. Moving too quickly will tear them open again." Amelia forced her eyes open. She was in a bed, a real bed, with silk sheets and soft pillows, in a room lit by both candles and the early morning light filtering through gauzy curtains. A healer with gray-streaked dark hair and gentle hands was checking the bandages wrapped around Amelia's torso. "Where am I?" Amelia asked. "The palace. His Majesty's personal wing, actually." The healer smiled at Amelia's shocked expression. "You've been unconscious for 2 days, while we worked to counteract the silver poisoning. It was extensive. Whoever wielded that chain meant to kill you slowly." 2 days. Amelia tried to process that, but her mind felt sluggish, still foggy from pain and whatever medicines they'd given her. "The scars will be significant," the healer continued, her expression sympathetic. "The chain was spelled to leave permanent marks, and we couldn't reverse all of the damage. But you'll live, and your wolf survived, though she's weak. That's more than most can say after 20 lashes with the chain of binding." Amelia closed her eyes, feeling tears burn behind her lids. Scars. She'd carry the evidence of that day on her skin forever. A reminder of her powerlessness, her status as Omega, her place at the bottom of the hierarchy where anyone could hurt her and face no consequences. Except Corbin had faced consequences. The Alpha King himself had stopped her execution, claimed her, ordered Corbin's trial. "Why did he do it?" she whispered. "The king. Why did he save me?" The healer's expression turned thoughtful. "His Majesty hasn't explained himself to me, but I can tell you that he's been here every day, checking on your progress. He had his own bed moved in here so he could work while you healed, said he didn't trust anyone else to keep watch. And when you were feverish from the silver on the first night, screaming from nightmares, he held your hand until you calmed." The image of the fierce Alpha King sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, seemed impossible. Yet Amelia could smell him now that she was paying attention. Pine and winter air, and something uniquely him, far stronger in this room than any other scent. "He's coming," the healer said suddenly, her head tilted as if listening to something Amelia couldn't hear. "I'll leave you to speak privately." Before Amelia could protest, the healer was gone, and moments later, the door opened to admit Elijah. He was dressed less formally than he'd been in the council chamber. Simple black trousers and a loose white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. But he still radiated power and authority with every step. "You're awake," he said, and there was relief in his voice that made her chest tighten. "How do you feel?" "Like I was whipped with a silver chain," Amelia answered before she could stop herself, then immediately regretted her flippant tone. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I didn't mean—" "Don't." He crossed to the bed, pulling a chair close and settling into it. "Don't apologize for speaking honestly. That's what got you into this situation, and I won't have you regret it." She studied him in the morning light. There were shadows under his eyes, and his hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He looked tired, she realized. Tired and worried. Corbin's trial was yesterday, Elijah said. He was found guilty on all charges. The High Council voted for exile rather than death, and I agreed. He's been stripped of his rank and banished beyond the kingdom's borders. If he returns, the sentence converts to immediate execution. And Alpha Brennan? Removed from the High Council for his role in covering up his son's crimes. He's been fined and his pack is under probation. If any member of his pack attempts to harm you, the entire pack will be dissolved and its members dispersed. Elijah leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. You're safe now, Amelia. I give you my word. The sound of her name on his lips sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. You used sovereign claim. That means I belong to you now. Technically, yes. He ran a hand through his hair, confirming her earlier suspicion. But I won't force you into service if that's not what you want. When you're healed, I can arrange for you to join a different pack, one where you'll be treated fairly. Or you can remain here at the palace, whatever you choose. Amelia's breath caught. He was giving her a choice, an actual choice, something she hadn't had since her mother died. Why are you being kind to me? Elijah was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Do you believe in fated mates? The question caught her completely off guard. I don't know. My mother used to tell me stories about them, but I've never met anyone who actually found theirs. Neither had I until 2 days ago. He stood, moving to the window, his broad shoulders tense. When I walked into that council chamber and saw you on your knees, bloody and defiant, my wolf went insane. It took everything I had not to slaughter every person in that room for daring to hurt you. And when I picked you up, when I caught your scent beneath the silver and blood, he turned back to her, and the raw emotion on his face made her heart stutter. You're my mate, Amelia. My fated mate. And I nearly lost you before I even knew your name. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Mate. Fated mate. The Alpha King's fated mate. It was impossible. Omegas didn't have fated mates. Everyone knew that. They were too weak, their bloodlines too diluted. Fated mates were for alphas and strong betas, wolves of power and prestige. That's not possible, she breathed. I'm Omega. I'm nothing. In 3 strides, Elijah was beside the bed again, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted his obvious strength. You are not nothing. You are brave and honest and strong enough to survive torture that would break most wolves. And you are mine. The mate bond, dormant and unrecognized until this moment, suddenly flared to life between them. It was like a golden thread stretching from her heart to his, pulsing with warmth and rightness and a sense of home she'd never known. Her wolf, weak as she was, lifted her head and howled in recognition, in joy, in claiming. I feel it, Amelia whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. The bond, it's real. It's real, Elijah confirmed, his thumb brushing away her tears. And it's yours to accept or reject. I won't force this on you, Amelia. But I want you to know that my wolf has already decided. You're his, and he'll protect you until his last breath. She should be cautious. She barely knew this man, this king. But the bond didn't lie, and neither did the way he looked at her, like she was precious, like she mattered, like she was worth protecting. "What happens if I accept?" she asked. "Then you become my mate publicly, my Luna, my queen." He said it simply, but the implications were staggering. You'd have power, protection, a voice that can't be silenced, and you'd have me, for better or worse, for the rest of our lives. "I was a servant 2 days ago," she said, her voice shaking. "I scrubbed floors and hauled linens. I don't know how to be a queen." "Then I'll teach you. We'll learn together." His smile was small but genuine, transforming his severe features into something almost boyish. "I've only been king for 2 years. Half the time, I'm still figuring it out myself." Amelia laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at her healing back. Elijah's smile vanished immediately, replaced by concern. "You need to rest more," he said, standing. "I should let you sleep." "Wait." She caught his hand before he could move away, ignoring the spark of electricity that jumped between their touching skin. "If I accept the bond, what does that mean for you? Won't people question why you chose an Omega?" His expression hardened. "Let them question. You're my fated mate. The moon goddess herself chose you for me. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made something warm and sweet bloom in her chest. "Then I accept," she said softly. "I accept the mate bond." Elijah's eyes flashed black, his wolf surging forward at her words. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a brand and a promise. "Then you're mine, Amelia, and I'm yours. No one will hurt you again. I swear it." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of healing and learning. The scars on Amelia's back healed into silver lines, just as the healer had predicted, permanent marks from the spelled chain. But Elijah never flinched from them. When she finally felt strong enough to look at her back in a mirror and broke down crying at the twisted network of scars, he'd held her and told her they were proof of her strength, evidence of what she'd survived. "Every scar tells a story," he'd said, his fingers tracing feather light over the marks. "Yours tell the story of an Omega who refused to be broken, who defended herself even when the world punished her for it. I think they're beautiful." He'd arranged for tutors to teach her everything a Luna needed to know: pack politics, diplomacy, the history of the werewolf kingdoms, proper etiquette. Amelia absorbed it all with desperate focus, determined to prove she deserved to stand beside him. But the most important lessons came from Elijah himself, during the quiet evenings they spent together in his, now their, quarters. He taught her that power wasn't about dominance, but about responsibility. That being king meant serving your people, not ruling over them. That strength came in many forms, and surviving what she'd survived made her stronger than most alphas would ever be. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other. She discovered he loved to read histories and hated formal dinners, that he'd been close to his father but distant from his mother, who died when he was young, that he sometimes woke in the night from dreams of failing his people, of not being enough. He learned that she'd lost her mother to sickness when she was 15 and had been alone ever since. That she loved gardens and growing things, that she'd once dreamed of being a healer before circumstances forced her into service. That she was terrified of being a disappointment, of proving everyone right who'd said Omegas were worthless. "You could never disappoint me," he told her one night, holding her close on the sofa while rain pattered against the windows. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. The mate bond grew stronger every day, the golden thread between them thickening and solidifying until Amelia could feel his emotions like her own. His protectiveness, his pride in her progress, his desire, carefully controlled, to complete the bond physically. But he never pushed, never demanded. He was waiting for her to be ready, to feel safe enough. The announcement of their mating came exactly 1 month after her near execution. Elijah called a gathering of all the high alphas and their packs, a formal ceremony where he would present his Luna to the kingdom. Amelia stood in front of the mirror in their chambers, barely recognizing herself. The dress was deep blue silk that pooled around her feet, the back cut high enough to hide most of her scars, but low enough to leave no doubt they existed. Her dark hair had been styled in elaborate braids, woven with silver thread, and a delicate crown of moonstone and sapphires rested on her head. "You look like a queen," Elijah said from the doorway, and the awe in his voice made her blush. He crossed to her, devastatingly handsome in his formal regalia, black and silver, with the crown of the Alpha King glinting in his dark hair. When he reached her, he took both her hands in his. "Are you ready for this?" he asked gently. "It's not too late to wait if you need more time." Amelia squeezed his hands. "I'm ready. I want to stand beside you." His smile was radiant, and he leaned down to brush his lips against her forehead. "Then let's show them what a true Luna looks like." The ceremony took place in the great hall of the palace with hundreds of wolves gathered to witness. Amelia's heart pounded as they made their entrance, Elijah's hand firm and steady at the small of her back. She could feel the eyes on her, hear the whispers, "Omega, servant, no one." But she lifted her chin and met their stares. Elijah led her to the dais where the high alphas waited. Alpha Rendell stepped forward to perform the ceremony, though his expression was carefully neutral. "Alpha King Elijah," he intoned, his voice carrying through the hall. "You have called us here to acknowledge your chosen mate. Present her now before the High Council and the gathered packs." "This is Amelia," Elijah said, his hand moving to rest possessively on her waist. "My fated mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. I present her to you as my Luna, my queen, and the rightful co-ruler of this kingdom." More whispers, louder now, but before anyone could object, Elijah continued. "Some of you may question my choice. She was born Omega, without rank or family. But she possesses something far more valuable than bloodline or status. She has courage, honor, the strength to stand up for herself even when it meant facing death. And she survived 20 lashes with a chain of binding, a torture that would kill most wolves, and came out the other side with her spirit unbroken." He turned to face the assembly, his presence commanding absolute attention. "This woman is stronger than many alphas I've met. She will make a queen this kingdom can be proud of. And anyone who dares to show her disrespect will answer directly to me." The threat in his words was unmistakable. Silence fell over the hall, heavy and expectant. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in, the sound building until the entire hall erupted in applause. Not everyone was genuine. Amelia could see the forced smiles and resentful glares, but many seemed honestly moved by Elijah's words. Alpha Rendell stepped forward again, this time with something resembling approval in his weathered face. "Then by the power vested in me by the High Council, I recognize Amelia as Luna and queen, fated mate to Alpha King Elijah. May the moon goddess bless your union. He produced a silver chain, not the weapon that had scarred her, but a delicate necklace with a moonstone pendant carved with the royal seal. When he moved to place it around her neck, Amelia flinched involuntarily, her body remembering silver chains and pain. Elijah was there instantly, his hand covering hers. "It's all right," he murmured, for her ears only. "Just a necklace. I'd never let anyone hurt you with silver again." She nodded, forcing her shoulders to relax, and allowed Rendell to complete the gesture. The moonstone settled against her collarbone, warm instead of burning, beautiful instead of painful. The ceremony concluded with a formal feast. Amelia sat beside Elijah at the high table, acutely aware of every eye in the room, watching her navigate the elaborate place settings and formal conversations. But Elijah's steady presence at her side anchored her, his hand occasionally finding hers under the table to give reassuring squeezes. It was during the third course that the challenge came. A young alpha from one of the northern packs stood, his face flushed with wine and courage. "Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but many of us are concerned. An Omega Luna has never been done before. How can she lead beside you when she has no wolf authority?" The hall went quiet. Elijah's hand tightened on his goblet, his jaw clenching. But Amelia spoke before he could. "You're right," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite her nerves. "I have no wolf authority. I can't command submission the way an alpha can, but I don't need to." She stood, meeting the young alpha's gaze steadily. Leadership isn't about forcing others to obey through dominance. It's about earning respect through actions, making decisions that benefit everyone, not just the powerful, protecting those who can't protect themselves. She paused, then continued. "I survived something that should have killed me because I refused to lie, refused to back down from the truth even when it would have been easier. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. And if you can't respect that, then you don't deserve to be part of this pack." Silence. Then Elijah stood beside her, his arm sliding around her waist in open claim. "My Luna has spoken. Anyone else have concerns they'd like to voice?" No one did. The young alpha sat down quickly, his face red, and the feast resumed. But Amelia noticed the difference in how people looked at her now. Less dismissive, more considering. She'd proven she could hold her own, at least verbally. Later that night, after the guests had finally departed and they were alone in their chambers, Elijah pulled her into his arms and buried his face in her hair. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her temple. "Did you see their faces when you called them out? I've never been more proud." Amelia laughed, the sound shaky with relief. "I was terrified. I thought my voice would shake too much for anyone to take me seriously." "You were perfect." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "Thank you for standing up for yourself. For us." The mate bond thrummed between them, pulsing with emotion, pride, affection, desire. Amelia's breath caught as she recognized the heat building in Elijah's dark eyes. "Amelia," he said softly, his thumb brushing across her lower lip. "I want to complete the bond, fully, but only if you're ready. Only if you want it too." She did want it. She'd wanted it for weeks but had been too afraid to say so, too convinced he might regret choosing her once the initial rush of finding his mate wore off. But he hadn't. He'd stood by her, protected her, helped her grow into her new role, and now, surrounded by his scent and his warmth and the evidence of his absolute devotion, she finally felt safe enough to take this last step. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I want to be yours, completely." His growl was pure satisfaction, and then his mouth was on hers, gentle at first, then deeper as she opened for him. He lifted her easily, carrying her to their bed, and she helped him with the complicated fastenings of her formal dress. When they came together, when the mate bond finally sealed completely with the joining of their bodies, Amelia felt something shift deep in her chest. The golden thread between them blazed white hot, then settled into something stronger than before, unbreakable and eternal. "Mine," Elijah growled against her throat, his teeth grazing the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. "My mate, my Luna, my queen." "Yours," she gasped, her hands clutching his shoulders. "Always yours." The mark he left on her neck glowed briefly with silver light, the mark of a true mate bond, visible proof of their connection. And when she marked him in return, feeling his wolf submit to her in that moment of vulnerability, she finally understood what it meant to have power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to be an equal, to be chosen, to be loved. The following months brought challenges Amelia had never imagined. Being Luna meant far more than sitting beside Elijah at formal dinners. It meant managing pact disputes, organizing resource distribution, representing the kingdom at diplomatic meetings. She made mistakes, plenty of them, but Elijah was always there to help her learn, to defend her when others criticized, to remind her she was exactly where she belonged. Slowly, the kingdom began to accept her. Not everyone, not all at once, but gradually people saw past her Omega status to the woman beneath. When she established a sanctuary for Omegas who'd suffered abuse, providing them with training and education so they could choose their own paths, even some of her harshest critics softened. When she personally interceded to stop a pack war that would have killed hundreds, using diplomacy where others wanted violence, her reputation grew. When she stood beside Elijah during the worst plague in 50 years, working alongside healers despite the risk of infection, refusing to hide in safety while her people suffered, they began to call her the Omega Queen, with respect instead of mockery. But it was what happened almost 2 years after their mating ceremony that truly changed everything. Amelia was in the gardens, her personal sanctuary, filled with medicinal plants and flowers she'd cultivated herself, when the pain hit. Sharp and sudden, like claws raking down her spine, exactly where the old silver scars lay. She gasped, dropping her pruning shears, and the world tilted sideways. "Luna!" One of her guards rushed forward, catching her before she fell. "Someone get the king and the healers!" Amelia tried to speak, to say she was fine, but another wave of pain crashed over her. This was different from the silver poisoning, different from anything she'd experienced. It felt like her scars were burning from the inside out, like something was trying to push through them. Then Elijah was there, his face pale with worry as he scooped her into his arms. "I've got you. Hold on, love. Just hold on." The healers worked over her for hours, while Elijah paced like a caged wolf, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, the head healer emerged from the examination room, her expression odd. "Your Majesty," she said slowly, "I've never seen anything like this. The silver scars, they're not just scars anymore. They've transformed into something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Elijah demanded. "The silver from the chain of binding, it didn't just scar her. It fused with her spine, with her wolf spirit. And now that she's fully matured as Luna, now that her wolf has grown stronger through the mate bond, the silver has awakened." "Awakened?" Amelia's voice was weak as she appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "What does that mean?" The healer gestured her forward. "Turn around. Let him see." Amelia did, and Elijah's sharp intake of breath told her something had changed. She felt his fingers trace the scars on her back, but they weren't just scars anymore. They glowed faintly silver, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, forming patterns that looked almost like ancient runes. "The silver has become part of you," the healer explained. "It's given you a gift, though it was born from torture. You have the ability to bind other wolves, to temporarily suppress their wolf spirits, to make even the strongest alpha as powerless as an omega, simply by willing it." Amelia's mind reeled. The chain of binding had been meant to destroy her wolf, to leave her broken and weak. Instead, it had transformed her into something unique, something powerful. "Show me," Elijah said softly. "Try it on me." "What? No, I can't." "I trust you." He moved to stand in front of her, his expression open and certain. "Try." Tentatively, Amelia reached for the strange new awareness inside her, the silver power that thrummed along her spine. She focused on Elijah, on his wolf, and pushed. His eyes widened as his wolf retreated, suppressed by her will. For a moment, he was just human, strong still, but without the supernatural power that made him Alpha King. Then she released him, and his wolf surged back with a relieved howl. "Incredible," he breathed. "Do you know what this means? You're not defenseless anymore. If anyone threatens you, you can neutralize them without violence. No Omega has ever had this kind of power." Over the following weeks, Amelia learned to control her new ability. She could bind multiple wolves at once if needed, could maintain the suppression for hours if she concentrated. It wasn't something she used lightly. The power felt sacred, earned through suffering. But knowing she had it changed everything. Word spread quickly through the kingdom. The Omega Queen who could bind any alpha, who bore silver scars that glowed with power, who'd transformed torture into strength. Some feared her, but most saw what Amelia saw: justice. The silver chains that had been meant to destroy her had instead made her powerful enough to protect others from the same fate. One evening, 3 years into their mating, Amelia stood on the palace balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Elijah's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "How different everything is now," she answered. 3 years ago, I was scrubbing floors and trying not to be noticed. Now I'm queen. I have power. I have you. She turned in his arms to face him. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. It's real. He kissed her softly. You're real. This is your life now. The life you earned through your strength and courage. The life we built together, she corrected, and his smile was everything. Below them, the kingdom stretched out in all directions. Their kingdom, their people, their responsibility. And Amelia knew that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. The Omega who'd been whipped with silver chains had become a queen who could bind any alpha. The servant no one had valued had become the Luna everyone respected. And the woman who'd been told she was worthless had found her fated mate, her equal, her home. She'd been broken and remade, scarred and transformed, and in the end, she was exactly who she was always meant to be. Powerful, loved, whole. Did you like this story? Do you want a part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, big shout out to our viewers from Canada, Michigan, Long Island, New York, Central Florida, California, Southern Missouri, and more. I appreciate you all so much. To our growing viewers, tell us which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching!